All right, looks like we're live. All right, let's double check to see if we've got that live feed thing going on here. It says we're live, so
should be good then.
I mean, so they say, right? So they tell me.
Technology, like technology's ever let us down.
No. James, I have to say, our technology. Okay, it says it's live. Quality is good. Batteries to power, turbines to speed. Off we go. Cool.
I'm guessing quality. It means the internet speed, not the actual quality.
Yeah. Smarty pants.
We're gonna try not to suck too much anyway. Let's keep the bar low. Let's just keep the expectations low.
I figure I made that my life goal. Keep the expectations low and successfully exceed them. That's a good way to go. All right, let's see. All right,
James, the funny thing in your background is we can just see one blade of the fan as it spins
I know.
above your head. It's fantastic.
I'm gonna move it so that way you don't see.
You gonna move the fan?
Yeah, you got to get up there and rewire the fan. No,
there.
Okay.
I'll move it so that way you don't have to see the fan.
So was I. These work from home setups, you just can't. We're all doing our best, right?
That's exactly it. All right. 3, 2, 1, go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down the Security Rabbit Hole to yet another edition of the Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. And officially on the East Coast, it is afternoon. And over there, I guess it's still technically morning. It's 10-ish?
It is 10:07 to be precise.
10:07, right. So we're straddling time zones now. This is fantastic. And as James fiddles with his camera there, that'll be fun. All right. So guys, this episode is in conjunction. We got a special guest host, Ken Fishkin. Say hi, Ken.
Hello, everyone.
And Ken's coming to you live from his craft room below the Fishkin Manor there in
Yes.
somewhere in New Jersey. That's a cool room, man. That's my daughter will love that room. But we decided that we were going to partner up with the New Jersey ISC2 chapter, get some of their questions. Especially since we've got Ann on the show, and Ann takes like 6 to 7 months to schedule because she's that cool and popular. So Ann, welcome to the show as well. Good to have you aboard.
Thank you. It's great to join you again. I don't know if it's that I'm that popular. It's just that I get very, very, very scheduled. But thanks for your patience. I know we've been trying to do this since actually I've been trying to do this since the end of baseball season. This is kind of how I, or the beginning of baseball season, how I measure my life. And now we're at the beginning of hockey season where my beloved Blackhawks are 0-4-1, and I'm devastated.
Let's
the White Sox are out
with
too.
That.
Yeah.
Well, White Sox. I'm a Cubs fan. We had no chance. We traded everybody this year. Easy.
You had a fire sale.
We did. We fire saled everybody that could swing a bat. That went, wait, why are we losing? No, but so, I guess let's start the podcast off with the obvious question. What in the heck is wrong with our Blackhawks?
I just, I could opine a lot, but I think the problem is they had so much salary cap damage going into the past few years that they've now had to dig themselves out of these super long contracts that they signed, during their heyday, right? When they won 3 Stanley Cups. But it's disappointing. I have 3 sports teams I cheer for: the White Sox, who did not show up well against the Astros, the Blackhawks, who were 0-4-1, and then, and you may not know this, my beloved Dallas Cowboys, who are actually having a great start to the season. So I'm in football mode right now and hoping hockey turns itself around.
How are you a Cowboys fan?
Well, it's the I actually grew up in New Jersey, and my parents were not sports fans, and the Cowboys were always on television in that era that I grew up, right? I grew up watching Roger Staubach, so they were always on television. My parents weren't sports fans, so there was no home affinity, and I just fell in love. And I've literally been a Cowboys fan since the 70s. I mean, I'm dating myself here, but it's been a very long love affair.
The Bears suck. I mean, I know they're not terrible. They're just not great.
Well, my husband's been a Bears season ticket holder since, I don't know, the 70s. And he still has Bears season tickets, even though we haven't lived in Chicago for a while, and he just laments his Bears every day.
Yeah. I'm a hometown Braves fan now. On top of, I'm always going to be a Cubs fan, but a hometown Braves fan now. And watching the last couple of games has been, it's good. My cardiologist is going to love me because the heart rate is high the entire. Although we crushed them one game and then we lose 11-2 last night. Like what is going on? Like, is there no consistency? Apparently, the answer is no. But
well, they both have, you know what? We'll do one more sports bit and then we should probably get to cyber. But, Chris Taylor really redeemed himself last night, right? He had that huge base running error that was really problematic. And last night he has we have 6 RBIs. And I am cheering. I don't have really a horse in the race, but I'm cheering for the Dodgers because I lost a very good friend of mine. It's been about a year and a half, and he was world's biggest Dodger fan. So I'm just for affinity for him since I don't have a team anymore in the series. So we'll stay on opposite sides of this, but for the Dodgers, they have to win every game now. It's a must win every single game.
Yeah, and it is an absolute must win. All right, so on to cyber as my. It's funny. We all have our little quirks this morning. I think apparently the schedule that I posted the landscapers have decided that, okay, 1:00, now we're going to show up right go. But yeah, that's going to be fascinating. You listen to the 600 horsepower leaf blower come by for the next half hour. Anyway, so cybersecurity. Let's pull that thread. Let's talk. We've had you on the show before. You've done some time in the leadership chair. First, before we get going too far, give us a little taste of what you're doing now, because your job title has changed and you've moved around a bit inside the Big Blue.
Yeah, so I've been here almost 6 years. When I started, it's amazing to me. When I started, we were a sub $1 billion security business, and you saw our big announcement about the business, and the team that we've grown in the past 6 years. So last year, it was last July, I moved over to start. I started a lot of groups earlier. My biggest love still is our DART team, our detection and response team that I started, 6 years ago. But I moved over to start what we call our business development practice for security, because we didn't have one. And we had it in pieces. So we brought it all together, and I've been having fun. I was able to, my team was able to buy 3 companies. So we bought Refirm, which was OT security, and we bought Risk IQ, and we bought CloudKnox this year. We do strategic partnerships. So we signed like a partnership with SAP and our Sentinel solution. And then we think about big bets. And one of those we announced early October was with AppBay for cyber insurance. So that's the type of work my team's doing
awesome
today. Yeah, it's fun. I have a really fun job.
Yeah, well, you do. Yeah, in addition to getting to globetrot quite a bit, although you getting to spend time. Are your dogs just confused that you're home a lot now?
I don't know if they're going to let me travel again. I have, for those of you who don't know, I have 3 rescue pups. We call them my supervisors because they sit in the office with me most of the time. They're not here right now because we wanted a non-barking podcast. But I've been home since RSA last year, right? That was the last trip I took. I went to Japan and then I went to RSA, and we are taking a family trip over the holidays this year. That'll be my first trip. And I said for work, I'll start traveling again in January, but I probably won't be doing as much globetrotting in this new role.
Well, that's pretty cool. Ken, tell us a little bit about you, because you're joining us kind of as a guest host here on behalf of your organization. So give us the 30-second version.
So I'm the manager of information security at a law firm in New Jersey, Lowenstein Sandler. And I'm also president of the New Jersey ISC2 chapter. We have about 180 members now. And we're all virtual. We have monthly meetings that are all virtual. We're trying now to start having some on-site events now, like picnics and stuff like that. None of those big lavish gala dinners that we used to have, and keeping it a little low-key now. But nobody needs any certificates to be part of our organization. And now, since we're virtual, anybody from around the world could be a member now. So that's the more interesting thing about it. So now that's kind of how we expanded so much, because, and that's why we have to stay virtual, because everybody, we have people from all over the world now being part of this organization. So it's pretty great.
And I can attest to the fact that your org, your members show up. They did a talk for you guys, and you had a significant amount of people show up, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I really, I'm really blessed that people are such community oriented. That's really the one thing that I really love about it, and that's what keeps me going as being president. I mean, we have this great mentorship program where they're mentoring each other. We also are doing some community service where we're working with schools and high schools, getting them on board as far as learning about cybersecurity. We're doing a public speaking workshop once a month now to get people
That's
with
fun.
their soft skills. It's like it's not Toastmasters, but it's that kind of thing where we're really training people the basics of doing it, and we've been doing that for almost a year now, and
Nice.
it's been a lot of fun.
All right, James, it's always good to have you've gotten your fan fixed. You're all good now. You're settled in.
I'm not all good, but I think it'll work if you can hear me okay. For some reason, when I plugged in my other monitor so I could look straight at the screen, it killed my mic. So I cannot win. I don't know what happened there.
This reminds me of that Arsnake episode we had where it took him like 20 minutes to figure out which of his 37 cameras.
Yeah, which camera's looking at me right now? Like, well, it's right there.
All of them. All of them. All right, let me start.
I said, when do we not have technical problems when we do this stuff, right? Like that. It's just how.
Thanks
it
for the
works.
curse, man. Thanks for the curse. All right.
Quick question before we move on, real quick though, Ken. I was just curious. You mentioned you work with high school kids and that type of stuff. Do you partner with things like I can't even think of what it is now. I just had it on.
Security Advisor Alliance.
No, there's one for like high schools where the Cyber Patriot. That's what it is. Do you partner with like, things like Cyber Patriot and stuff like that? That's embedded kind of in the high school age level, or given thought to that?
The organization that we're working with right now is called IQ4. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but yeah, we just started that partnership a few months ago, and yeah, we'll see. But I'm open to other organizations, absolutely, because it's been really a success here.
Excellent.
All right, let's dive in. And I'm going to give this pitch one over to you, and I'll let you go with it. But you spent a ton of time traveling, and I imagine you have met a lot of security leadership across the beautiful globe that we spin around on. As we kind of talked about the topics we wanted to address, I'm glad we've got you because you've got perspective from the way it's sort of the headspace of the CISO looking backwards, and I imagine with what your job at Microsoft is looking forward as well as we start to advise. How has the role changed in the last? I don't want to say 10 years, in the last 2 to 3 years. 'Cause I know it has.
Yeah, I'd say a couple things. First, top of mind for CISOs still is ransomware, right? I love the quote from one CISO who said, "Can you just figure this ransomware out so that I can go have more strategic conversations with my board again?" It was like, can you just help, right, and get this off my plate so I can talk to the board? And that leads me to how the job has changed, right? It's changed materially because CISOs kind of grew up traditionally in a couple of places, right? They came out of the compliance side, or they came out of the network side, or some of them were former law enforcement. That was kind of the three flavors you got. And there were others, right? But some of them were also just career executives at the companies they were at who rotated into the CISO role. Now they're expected to be somebody who understands how to run the program, but really be business leaders, right? Really integrated with the lines of business, be able to articulate in a meaningful way to the board, in a way the board will understand what the cyber risks are. And that's how everyone's thinking about cyber now, right? Is a risk conversation. So at the executive leadership level, at the board level, these are expectations we didn't have on the CISO, say 3 to 5 years ago. They were kind of sometimes hidden underneath the CIO. In a lot of places now, they report to the chief risk officer or the CFO, or they may be even a direct report in the CEO, depending on the size of the company. So we're putting a lot on these folks to understand security and threats, but also to be business leaders. And it's changed the dimension of the job. But, Ken was just talking about things like, I have a degree in public speaking, by the way, but Ken was talking about soft skills like public speaking and writing. And these are not necessarily skills in that organization that we valued. We valued more technical skills previously, and now they're really having to be much broader.
Yeah. Not to throw this in there, but I'm just going to say the previous episode to this one. I don't know if you guys listened, but we had an old friend of mine from a couple of jobs ago. He's at a company right now where they've actually in it's a solution that's looking for a broader adoption, and maybe it gets incorporated into Microsoft endpoint technology. Wink, wink.
You never know.
They basically figured out how to take the fangs off of ransomware, because as it triggers an encryption routine, they snag a copy of those keys, stick them up in a write only database, and so when it's done, you're like, hey, thanks, but I'm going to undo this all, and just poof. So, but yeah, I get the nature of what you're talking about, because there have been a couple of times in the time that I spent in the enterprise where the agenda was completely hijacked by current events, right? Ransomware is absolutely one of those. But there was other stuff going on, like maybe if you remember how suddenly the two things that impacted most of my agenda when I was spent time in GE for a couple of years was full disk encryption and backup tape encryption. Ironically, both of those were encryption. But we had a CIO that liked to watch the news, and some company somewhere lost a backup tape, and it wasn't encrypted, and they were talking about it, and suddenly we dropped every project to go encrypt our backup tapes, and arguably that's not necessarily the right approach. But it feels like there's these times, and somehow all three of them that I can think of have to do with encryption. But ransomware is kind of background noise, background noise in a lot of companies now, because it's not going away. It's the thing that they hear about every single day, and you have to have an answer. Are we impacted? Are we in trouble? How do we get around it? Do we have the protections? Blah blah blah.
Yeah, I would say so. You may not remember this, but before I joined RSA Security in the year 2000, I actually had a career at Data General and EMC. So the storage and backup stuff actually predated the security stuff. And I remember the times when tapes were falling off the back of trucks, right? That was the joke, right? Your tapes falling off the back of the truck, and we're still in. Look, what this drives, and there were folks I was actually did another webinar with that talked about the fact that data is still the most important thing. Whether it's ransomware, whether it's tapes falling off the back of the trucks, we still need to think about protecting data and access to data. And data is the crown jewels of any organization. And that's what it all comes down to. And I think we've gotten away from those disciplines a little bit, or at least thinking about it in that manner a little bit. And I really trying to, get security back to its ground roots of, data is the most important thing. Now, there's a whole lot of things you can do with zero trust and a whole lot of stuff we can talk about. But at the end of the day, you're trying to protect access to your data.
That makes sense. I mean, data tends to be it is the thing, right? It's the reason we have a discipline that we have. I remember back in my day. No, I remember back when somebody said, "Where's your important data?" and you could point at a system that had one of those large cassettes and a 40 megabyte hard drive. You'd be like, "I'm there." You can't do that anymore.
Nope.
Oh man, I think that takes us. That takes us the ransomware question. As it pertains to sort of the evolving role of the CISO. You mentioned less technical. Is that a trend? Because I remember we had this. The origin of this podcast was around a discussion just over 10 years ago, over Labor Day, I think. Yeah, over Labor Day weekend, one weekend. I was terrible at vacations back then. Should the CISO be a technical person that got promoted or a business person that got moved laterally, right? And that was a heated debate. And so it sounds like you're saying we're looking at more business focused than technical at this point.
I don't know that I'd characterize it like that. I think we're looking for platinum unicorns that can be both technical and business. I think we have these unrealistic. Yeah, we have these unrealistic expectations on the CISO. They're going to be technical enough to understand their program. They're going to be savvy enough to understand their business, and they're going to be articulate enough to communicate to the board externally as needed. And the best CISOs I know, and I would name them by name, but I won't. I know some brilliant CISOs that have figured out I'm going to have a really brilliant architect in the key areas of my program, I'm going to be technical enough. I'm going to have a brilliant architect. I'm going to have a communication person that actually helps me communicate. You know, I have a brilliant communication person, but a lot of CISOs now have a communication person, right? And I'm going to be surrounding myself with business people. So they figured out that they need to have that one layer beneath them that helps them scale across all of those areas. And those are in bigger programs, obviously. They have the luxury of doing that, but they really have, but the expectations on them are super high. They're super high. And by the way, don't have any events. That's don't have an event.
But how do you scale that down, though, for the smaller organizations that don't have the ability to have all those layers underneath? What's the give and take for, okay, I've got a CISO, I don't have the ability to have an architect, a communications person, and this. Which is priority? Does that just depend on the organization?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on the both the geography, the sector that you're in. You know, regulated industry versus non-regulated industry. But also, there's some brilliant MSPs out there that we're seeing more and more security solution providers that not just are going to run your systems, but they can do consulting across a wide range of things, including crisis management. I think mid to small enterprises need to, by the way, there's no need to. We've seen it everywhere. There's rapid growth in that managed service portfolio, and I think that's what can help the smaller business CISO, who may be the smaller business CISO. He or she may also be the one of 3 IT people in the entirety of the organization. So they really need to leverage outside help.
Yeah, I've been having, I'm exclusively focused on mid-market now, and I've been having those conversations. We're like, hey, what's your job function? Well, I head up the help desk, I run IT, and I'm also the chief security officer. It's like, oh God, you poor person.
Let me help you.
Right? Seriously.
And all that on an intern salary.
Yeah.
And now you have to. You have to add privacy to that also. Privacy expert also.
Yeah, and compliance. Yeah, exactly.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Ken, you want to take you guys had a couple of topics that you wanted to bring up. I'll let you take a stab at another one here.
Okay. All right. So we have one person who wanted to know about. She read an article about ransomware negotiators, that they're in great demand. And she wanted to know if you had any insight on how the negotiation works and what skills you need to be a negotiator.
So I'm going to start this by saying that we advise never to pay the ransom. I need to say that, okay? Because it's a self-fulfilling, thing if you pay the ransom. We also know that a lot of organizations have to pay the ransom, right? They have to get their businesses back online, right? So that's a great question. I would love to be a ransomware negotiator because I actually pride myself in being a pretty decent negotiator, and people don't necessarily like being across the table from me. But that being said, what I think the skills, that's I'm not sure that I'm qualified to answer it, but I think it's just like any other business negotiation, right? You also need to go in though, knowing that you're not negotiating with people who are acting in good faith. They're criminals. So go in knowing that go in and knowing you're negotiating with criminals. Go in and knowing. I saw a study not that long ago that said only about 60% of ransomware keys actually encrypt or decrypt. So know that you're not negotiating with people who are negotiating in good faith. Know that you may not get the outcome that you want, and you're just going to have to be fairly maniacal. And it's not a job I truly would wish on anyone.
But that's the pure definition of a negotiator, though, right? Like, I could do the FBI. I'm going in knowing I'm negotiating with people that are certainly not in good faith for this. But that's interesting. Like, that's a fantastic question. I love that question because I didn't realize that there was a high demand for ransomware negotiators. Like, that's
an entire industry.
I'm surprised it's so low that it's only 60%, because I would think it would be in their best interest to make it higher, because people would be less inclined to pay if they thought.
Well, in some cases, but yes. So I'm going to channel Tuma here because I'm going to pose this question to him, and we'll get him on the show again. But he was talking about that some groups, and the reason these negotiator type people exist, is these middlemen exist, is that they know the different gangs. They know which ones are likely to give you your data back if you pay, which ones you're basically negotiating with, somebody who's going to blow up the room whatever. And although I I wonder if they're being hired by insurance companies, or because I don't think they're getting hired. Well, maybe they are at the IT.
That's what it sounded like. But I mean,
Yeah.
when we talked to Tuma that one time, it sounded similar to that. I mean, I would say it sounds to me, based on some of the info we've gotten from other podcasts, right? If you're actually legitimately looking to get into that role, finding an organization that does that is like, you got to get in and find out how these people are doing it, like learn these channels. I don't know if you're just going to, load up Tor and get on the dark web and all of a sudden start getting ins on these different, groups out there doing this. I mean, I feel like that's something super specialized. You need to find somebody that's already doing, like either insurance companies that already have it in with people that do this to figure out, hey, how do you really get to do this to build? I don't know. It seems like it'd be kind of difficult just on your own to be like, I'm a ransomware negotiator.
I'm going to redirect this a little bit, because we do have a principled view you shouldn't pay the ransom. So here's what I will say, and it's probably going to be a question anyway you're going to ask me at some point. I think there's a huge role for government here, and I think the 30 countries that came together was a start, right? They certainly have the right ambitions. We'll have to see what comes from that, but they certainly have the right ambitions. Right. We'll see if they have the right execution, but there has to be a role for government. There has to be a role in how we're, we do a tremendous amount of work, and we still, and when I say we, I mean the global, I don't mean just the US. Think about anti-money laundering, right? There is all kinds of anti-money laundering regulation globally, and we're still imperfect at it. We need that same type of regulation, though, around cryptocurrency. It's still going to be imperfect, but it will help. There is no one size fits all. There isn't a, ban cryptocurrency, have sanctions, do offensive security. But to a certain extent, we have to make this a less profitable industry. We have to raise the cost to the attackers, reduce the return on investment, and then they're going to go find something else to do. And there was a presentation I listened to the other day. It was a confidential presentation from a group, though. The theory they pose is that ransomware is becoming less profitable, and they think in the next 3 to 5 years we're going to see these actors pivot to something else. By the way, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but the data was interesting.
The pivot's going to be. I loathe to see where the pivot's going to go, because okay, what now? What?
Well, it's the old joke. Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. Look, these people aren't going away. They're going to find different ways. The cybercrime gangs are making millions and billions of dollars. They're going to find, cybercrime is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, I think, now globally. They're going to find something.
Well, listen, criminals do what criminals do. I mean, it's, we witnessed the verticalization of criminality, of crimeware gangs. And we went from people that, develop bots to bot herders to distributions to malware developers and like the entire verticalized chain. And you looked at that and went, wow, that is a complete business, except for the fact that it's completely illegal. That's amazing. And I guess it's going to continue to evolve. All right, I'm going to steal one from you, Ken, because I saw this one in your email and I wanted to pose it because it's one I'm interested in. We all love talking about passwords. So I've seen the Microsoft commercials when there's no password needed. You kind of draw pictures and whatnot, and that sounds kind of cool. I've got authenticators and I've got one-time password generators. But how the hell do we get rid of passwords, or do we even want to? Let's start there. What are your thoughts on getting rid of passwords, Ann?
Yeah, so you're gonna know my answer to this. I joke, and I know it's a macabre joke, but I joke that on my tombstone it's gonna say use MFA, because I say it all the time. Use MFA 100% of your users 100% of the time. Look, you have to understand where I came from, though. So I was at RSA Security, right? So for 13 years. So the ultimate, token vendor, but also at RSA Security, I ran our global online banking fraud business. So that was actually risk-based authentication, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of what you're seeing now in conditional access is risk-based authentication. It's the, you don't want to challenge more than 3% of the users. You're looking at this whole set of data, not just, the user login, but you're looking at how the machine's behaving and how the geolocation, if you get it, the IP address, the MAC address, whatever it is you can get, and you're forming a risk score for that user and you're maintaining it through the whole session, right? And it changes dynamically through the session. The reason we have to get rid of passwords, it's not a want, we made a huge announcement. I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you saw, that in our consumer offerings now, you don't have to have a password. You can go passwordless on your consumer accounts. And I'm going to tell you, what after this, I'm going to tell you an anecdote about that. But the reason we want to get rid of passwords is we know, because we look at events that have happened within, the data and telemetry we have globally. We see something like 24 trillion signals a day. I just saw that stat recently. I was like, that's overwhelming. But
24 trillion.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand that number. That's like trying to understand the. Like, how many zeros is that? 7 to carry that? Like, a lot. Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot of zeros.
It's a, what I say, it's a BFN, a big factorable number. But anyway, so that's my politically correct version of that. But that all being said, we know that passwords are part of 90% plus of compromises. Whether it's a brute force attack, whether it's a password spray attack, whether it's a phishing attack, whatever other type of attacks. So eliminating passwords in their entirety reduces that attack surface materially. And that's the driver for us to get rid of passwords. Now I'm going to tell you an anecdote. 3 days ago, it was this week, I was sitting here in my office and I got a prompt for my Microsoft Authenticator on my phone. And it said, here's your prompt to access your personal mail account. And I'm like, I'm working. I'm not anywhere near my personal mail account. It's saved. Yeah. And I had gone passwordless on my account and I have the Authenticator. I have a couple other things. It saved me. Someone was trying to access my account. So I am a huge believer in, because remember, started RSA, I've always been a huge believer, but tokens have so much friction, right? Tokens are super friction, super hard to deploy, total cost of ownership is high, but getting to a place where you have biometrics and authenticators, and even the security keys are okay, right? They're a good fallback, but I just am a huge believer that you have to get rid of passwords.
Well, funny enough, that your anecdote rings true, because back a couple of years, got into some sort of weird vortex of troll hell, and I on a daily basis would get Twitter prompting me for hey, click here to log in. I'm like, nope, not me. Nope, not me. Nope, here, click here to reset your password. Also not me. I'm like, this is going to go poorly for you. That's interesting. I do you think that, because how do I want to ask this? The future, I can imagine in some, future instance, we have to account, like I've encountered issues with, so my phone is now fingerprint and face auth. I'm wearing a face mask. That's a problem. Because I have to kind of, okay, right. That's a challenge. But I found an interesting use case, because I was in the pool with my kids and my phone was buzzing. I'm like, I'm just going to get out and check it. And my hands had all kind of shriveled. I was like, and then my password, my fingers aren't going to work. I'm like, oh no. So it was very interesting. We've got these edge cases, and we've also, from a passwordless perspective, and this is probably not for this show, but we've got all the bias problems, the skin tone, the other sort of facial geometry issues that I feel like we simply aren't addressing adequately enough as an industry, because we're trying to just I feel like somebody said we have to get there arbitrarily. We picked a spot. We're going to get there. We're going to go there now. You're like, but there's these things that are in between us. Like, we'll figure it out as we go. I don't think that's a good idea either, but no, I agree. The future should be passwordless. I'd love that.
And we're bad at UX, and I'm going to tell you, even from the most mundane things. And I'll give you a story from a few years ago. I was in the ladies' room with a black woman, a colleague, and she walked up to the sink to wash her hands at an automatic faucet. And she's like, she's groaning. And I finally reached over to get the thing to turn on. She says it happens all the time. They don't test for skin tone.
What?
She said, even the most mundane UX, right? So now you extrapolate that into what you were talking about, technology, wearing a mask. I was talking to a hospital chain, and I remember when I was in Chicago, I had RSA, and there were doctors that had 5. Remember, doctors aren't employees of hospitals. They generally have admitting rights at hospitals, right? There were doctors that had 5 or 6 tokens, hardware tokens, on a chain that they were carrying around. But there's no great answer for them. They wear masks. They wear gloves, Prox devices. There could be 6 of them at the same kiosk. We have to think about, we call those edge cases, and healthcare, it's not really an edge case, but we have to actually think about those hard, we can solve for like 80-90% of the population. We have to solve for the hard edge cases also.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Ken, you want to take the last one? Because I'm going to softball that one over to you, because I think I've I think I've used up all of my time talking about the zero trust case. I know you guys had some questions. Your group had some questions around there.
I can do the 0-1. Okay, so should I talk about something else other than zero trust?
No, you can pick. Hey, man, it's your topic.
All right.
Whatever you want, Ken.
All right, so I'd rather talk about this one. This was an interesting one. Are there any distinct patterns or lesson learned from nation-sponsored attacks, such as SolarWinds, compared to other types of cyber attacks? And do you believe the lack of U.S. government urgency? What are your thoughts about people leaving? Like Nicholas Shalin. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Leaving. There's a lot of unknown right now, even though even though what's going on with countries getting together.
Yeah, I'm going to answer the last part of that question first. I'm not as concerned with people leaving. It's normal, right? We have political structure in the U.S. When administrations change, people change. It's normal, right? We have Jen Easterly now. We have the new NSA cyber director. His name, for some reason, is not at the top of my head. We may have some people transitioning. We have really quality people coming in too. We may have some really quality people transitioning. I'm not worried about that because there are a lot of, you don't see the duck under the water. There's a lot of people that are still in roles. Yeah, there are a lot of people still in roles. They're just not at those super senior levels. So there's a lot of continuity underneath a lot of those folks. So here's what I would say about nation states. And you have to understand that me and a whole lot of other people didn't get any time off between like Thanksgiving of last year and actually through the Kaseya attack. So the first vacation I took, or the first time off I had, was in August. I just want to give you that perspective, okay? And I'm not even on the front lines. I'm helping the people on the front lines. So think about that, okay? So we're gonna talk about nation states, and we'll talk about ransomware in that same context. The nation state actors are incredibly sophisticated, they're incredibly persistent, and they're incredibly well funded, right? So think about the funding they get. Some of these entities potentially turn a blind eye, or they harbor cyber criminals and ransomware gangs. There's probably the ransomware gangs, by the way, outsourced to nation states. We'll see cases where a ransomware gang will be monetizing an attack in two ways. They're selling entry to the nation state, and then they're launching a ransomware attack. So they're monetizing in both ways. But the nation states, and I'll talk just about some of the things we said publicly, right? Around SolarWinds, is we saw methods of attack and the types of abuse we saw with the Nobelium actor that we hadn't previously seen, and they also understood all of our tools, not just Microsoft's tools. They understood everyone's tools. They had everyone's tools in the lab, but they also understood how SOCs would respond, how we would investigate attacks, and they also took into account what log events we were looking for. So the sophistication of these actors is well beyond their access and what they're stealing. They also understand the playbook we have on response, which is why we have to change the playbook, right? This is, we're in the art of war here, right? We're in the Sun Tzu of cyber days. We actually need to change the playbook because we won't be effective if all we're doing is worrying about detection. We also need to change the response playbook so they're not putting those traps in place or eliminating log events that we would normally look for and those type of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's good. I like that answer.
All right. Well, as we're running out of time, and I want to maybe we pitch this over and say and give you this. What's a piece of advice you're currently giving people in leadership positions, and just the sage wisdom of Ann Johnson coming through here?
I'll say we recently released our Microsoft Digital Defense Report, and I had the opportunity to write a chapter in it. I also had an opportunity to write a chapter, and Christina Murillo organized a book called 97 Things Every Cybersecurity Professional Should Know. I don't think that's the exact title, but it's close, from O'Reilly Publishing. And I talked about the same thing. I talked about operational resilience, but digital empathy. You need to be unbelievably empathetic. We need to be empathetic as human beings to people working for us because they are highly stressed. As I mentioned, we have SOC people that just haven't had vacations, right? Across the world. We have, 3 million openings in cybersecurity right now globally. The need as a leader to be empathetic to people. Also, during the pandemic, people were working from home, trying to educate their children from home, maybe caring for an elderly or sick family member. Maybe they lost someone in their family. Their whole life, even the whole buying groceries changed for a short period of time, right? So the need for every leader right now is to be empathetic. And that is the word that I give leaders. You need to be empathetic. From a cyber standpoint, we also need to build systems that show digital empathy. So your user clicking on a link doesn't bring down your entire organization. We shouldn't put that kind of pressure on users. That means that our systems are empathetic to the end user experience.
I like that. Ken, I'll give you the final word.
The final word is, as you know, Rafal, I've been a fan for like 8 years now. I think listening to this podcast, and it really was one of the catalysts to get me to be able to speak to senior leadership about topics, because most of the other podcasts I was listening to were very technical. And this one was the one that really was different and unique, and that's why I've been listening all these years, and it's a huge honor to be on this show. I mean, I know a lot of people don't think anything of it, but for me it really is, and I want to thank you, and it was a pleasure meeting you, Ann, as well, and James, of course, but thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. It's been great. I love doing these, and I think we should just leave this as a plug at the end here for the Security Advisor Alliance. As members of the advisory board, and you're on the board of directors, I think, right? Aren't you? Yeah,
I think so.
We one of these 75 things that you're responsible for. Yeah. But the Security Advisor Alliance really has a very similar mission to what Ken's been doing on a kind of a global scale. Is addressing the talent gap, the talent shortage, and helping people learn from each other, and then in a service-oriented way. If you're ever so inclined, Security Advisor Alliance, give us a look. It'll be probably one of the better industry organizations you join. I can't promise you lots of free vendor dinners or swag, but it's certainly rewarding to go out and do something that leaves a better tomorrow. And Ann, I want to thank you for joining us. Everybody that's listening live on the live stream here, and then we'll be listening to the video and audio of this at a future date. And I'll simply say this at the end: Go Hawks!
Just win a game. And thank you for having me. Yeah, just win a game.
Can we win a game, please?
Just one. Thank you for having me again. It's been a pleasure. This is my second favorite podcast. So. And someday
hey, listen.
Only because I host my own. I have to say my own is my favorite. Yeah.
You can't end it and not tell us about Afternoon Cyber Tea.
Yeah, and hopefully one day, Rafal, I can have you on Afternoon Cyber Tea. We've just launched season 5. We started with Dr. Fiona Hill talking about this information. And then we had Wendy Nader on, who just, as you know, Wendy can talk about anything. She's so brilliant and just a lot of fun. And she can talk deep at any cyber subject. So, I love your podcast. I'm being genuine. I listen to your podcast, and hopefully we get you on Afternoon Cyber Tea soon.
All right, well, that's awesome. I look forward to it. Folks, thanks for those of you guys that have been on board for the 10 years that we've done this. It is awesome as we hurdle towards episode 500 coming up, I think, May of next year. We're going to have to do something awesome. Maybe I'll I remember you guys got me out to RSA. We did some booth stuff. That was fun. If RSA ever happens again, maybe we do something out that way. I don't know, but great to have you. I'm sure we'll get you back on. I think we should probably schedule now for your next appearance, so that's
2 years from now we'll make it happen.
Well, hopefully you don't get. Here's the not that much crazy globetrotting travel. How's that?
Exactly, and the dogs say hello too. Thank you both, Ken. It's awesome. A pleasure to meet you. It was a pleasure to be on.
Same here.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening. This has been another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast with my extra fun co-host here, Mr. Ken Fishkin from the ISC2 chapter in New Jersey. James that had to drop off for another thing he had to do. And, of course, the one and only Ann Johnson from Big Blue Microsoft over there doing great things and loving passwords. Just kidding. And this is Raf signing us off. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys another time, another place on another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Keep listening, share, and